I am tired of people talking about Ilia Topuria as if he's some villain. Ilia Topuria is saving the sport, and not only is he saving the sport, Ilia Topuria is the greatest fighter I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. I'm not talking about like best resume ever right now. I'm just saying this is the best fighter we've ever seen, okay? He just knocked out Charles Oliveira in the first real exchange on the feet. Wasn't even just a regular right hand. It was a right hook, left hook combo. Like, who's doing that? Okay? Who is doing this? He just KO'd Charles Oliveira in the first round. If that doesn't show you that lighter man skill exists, I don't know what does. You have no idea how hard I was cringing at people saying shit like, Charles might be too big. Charles might be too big. Yeah, right. Charles might be too big. Yeah, fucking right. Ilia Topuria fucking slept him out cold with the easiest fucking lemon peasiest combination I've ever seen in my fucking life. All right? Now, when I say easy, I mean, like, for him, though, like, it'd be one thing if Ilia Topuria just cracked Charles with a big overhand. This guy is, like, jabbing him up. Charles Oliveira just, he extends his hands for a second as if he's about to do something, and Topuria just intercepts that with the cleanest right hook, left hook combination speed that you don't see from these lightweights. Featherweights own lightweights, okay? Is it not clear at this point? Is it not clear that Ilia Topuria has a better chance to dominate the lightweights than he had against Volk and Max? And another thing that, people were like questioning if Topuria's power was going to hold up. And I understand that. We've seen guys like Conor move up and his power wasn't the same at 155 as it was at 145. Like, I just kept saying, dude, no one is KOing Max Holloway like that. It took him a while to KO Max, but as soon as he hit Charles with a good combo, and keep in mind, Oliveira's never been put out cold. In his last fight, he didn't take that much damage. The fight before that with Arman didn't really take a lot of damage. Against Dariush, he knocked him out, no damage. Against Makhachev, he got dropped, right? He always gets dropped, but Ilia Topuria out-colded this dude. Nobody is beating him. Nobody is stopping Ilia Topuria at 155. All right? Which is why I'm saying, like, this is the best fighter we've ever seen. And I don't understand this whole, like, oh, no, it's the toughest thing. I didn't want to see that. Like, dude, Charles has had his amazing run. People are acting like we haven't seen him take the painful loss to Islam Makhachev. You want to talk about pain? That was painful. I was rooting for Charles. I thought he was going to run through Makhachev. He got destroyed. That was painful. All right? But, people are acting like he didn't lose to Arman and fucking Makhachev, and it's like, dude, we've seen him lose before. We've seen this guy have an amazing run. Why would you be rooting for Ilia Topuria's, like, halt? Why do you want that momentum to be halted? This guy is an absolute monster. He's a knockout machine. He's undefeated. He trash talks. Like, why would you not root for a guy like this? It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. I know people love Charles, but, like, at some point, dude, you got to get over this guy knocking out your favorite fighters. All right? He knocked out my favorite fighter. He knocked out Volk. And Charles is one of my favorite fighters, too. But, like, you know what? He's not a villain, dude. This guy's saving the fucking sport. He's the most interesting fighter in the sport. And, like, how could anyone disagree with my take on him beating Makhachev at this point? All right, that's the other thing I want to talk about. I mean, not only did Ilia Topuria KO Charles Oliveira with ease, made it look easy, and I predicted he was going to make it look easy and that this was a mismatch on the feet. And I know Makhachev is a tougher fight, 100%, but we also saw Ilia Topuria, like, shuck Charles Oliveira off of him when he was going for a takedown, reversed an entire takedown while it was in motion, landed on top of Charles, didn't get tangled up in Charles's guard game, right? And actually put Oliveira in a crucifix position. He got to side control, then he got to crucifix, and then he got up, and people are like, well, yeah, but he got put in a leg lock. He got put in a leg lock. Like, yeah, he got put in a leg lock while he was getting up to his feet. It's not like getting put in a leg lock randomly. Like, this dude was able to shut down Oliveira's guard game and his grappling as well. He stuffed another takedown after that, I believe. I mean, Ilia Topuria, he's not going to get bitched by anyone in the lightweight division when it comes to grappling at this point. And it's clear that even though Makhachev may be the better fighter, like, how do you not see Topuria just doing this to everyone? All right? Again, the speed that these featherweights have, especially the best striking featherweights, when they move up, the lightweights aren't ready for it. If you mix that with Ilia's power and his boxing combos, like, everybody is fucked. And this is why, as I've said, and I'm saying, I think Topuria KOs Makhachev. I think he would do the exact same thing. I think that he KOs Arman. I think that he KOs Paddy. By the way, I would normally be freaking out about Paddy Pimblett getting a title shot off of a Michael Chandler win, even though, to be honest, Charles Oliveira just did it. But that's because he got the win over Chandler when Chandler was coming off of another loss. My point is, I was just happy, and I want to know if you guys were happy about this too. I was just hyped at the idea of Justin Gaethje, who's been whining and crying for a title shot, a totally undeserved title shot. I was laughing and loving every single second of the idea of Justin Gaethje, Rufus going, no, my title shot. Like, when Paddy Pimblett's up there, and keep in mind, Paddy Pimblett versus Ilia Topuria, it's a fun fight. I think Ilia flatlines him. I mean, I know Paddy's a scouser, and they don't get knocked out, lad, but come on, guys. Like, Paddy Pimblett's getting fucking flatlined, dude. He's a fucking lightweight. All right? He's a damn lightweight. He's not a better grappler than Charles Oliveira anyway. Like, none of that shit matters. He's getting destroyed. Either way, like, Justin Gaethje, you know he was huffing and puffing in his seat. And I absolutely love the UFC giving Paddy Pimblett an undeserved shot if it means that Justin Gaethje's going to be huffing and puffing some more. Okay? So I'm loving it. Some people think that, you know, they might call Paddy and ask him to fight Gaethje and ask him to fight Arman next. It's not happening. The UFC recognizes that Paddy and Ilia is the biggest fight. That's why when Ilia brought up Arman and Ilia didn't even mention Gaethje. That's so funny. Ilia doesn't even know Gaethje's still fighting. He probably thinks he's retired, which is hilarious. It really goes to show how, like, out of touch Justin Gaethje is for thinking that he deserves a fucking shot. But either way, even though Arman is the fight to make, and we're going to talk about why we're just not going to see Makhachev come back down to lightweight in the middle of a bulk to welterweight to fight the guy that just did what he did to Charles Oliveira. Makhachev is not, if he wasn't trying to fight Ilia before, I'm not saying he was ducking. I don't think he's going to see that nasty KO and want to come back down. All right. But the point that I'm making is the UFC knows that Paddy is a big star. They know that Ilia and Paddy have had that beef. They know it's a big fight. They're not going to put Paddy in the cage with the guy like Arman Tsarukyan and jeopardize that, all right? And they're definitely not going to even do him versus Justin Gaethje, even though he would probably beat Justin Gaethje. They're not going to do it. They're going to make Topuria versus Pimblett. That is the next fight. It is a little bit annoying that Pimblett's going to get this title shot off of beating Michael Chandler, who's coming off of a loss. Like, he just doesn't deserve it. But it should be exciting. There should be some good trash talk. I'm actually worried, though. And this is the one thing that I fear for Ilia. And I hope he's not this kind of guy. But Ilia has had such a quick rise to GOAT status. And I'm not saying he's the GOAT as far as, like, the best resume, but he's essentially top 5 at this point. I mean, you're looking at other undefeated fighters like Khabib, who everyone considers top 10 and whatnot. Like, Ilia took out Oliveira, Volkanovski, and Max Holloway back-to-back. Outside of that, he has 6 other wins in the UFC. He's 9-0 or 10-0 in the UFC at this point. I mean, some of the quality that this guy has is insane. I think he's top 5 at this point. Double champ status as well, which is pretty big. Ilia has gotten there so quickly, and everything has been unfolding so smoothly. He's been getting these KOs easily. The Max Holloway fight wasn't the easiest, I will say that, but still, like, knocking out Max, KOing Charles in the first 2 minutes, sleeping Volk out cold in the second round. I'm worried that Ilia is going to go into the Paddy fight and looking at Pimblett, thinking of him as like the least threatening opponent he's fought in quite some time, because we know Pimblett, he's not a KO artist. He's a grappler, very dangerous on the ground. He's okay on the feet. but he's just not the same level of skill as Volk when you're preparing for Volkanovski, the best featherweight of all time, who, moves around and, stings you like a fucking bee and floats like a butterfly, right? And you got Max Holloway, who's an avalanche, who just slept Justin Gaethje out cold, who's got a granite chin. It's impossible to put him out. Oliveira, he's dangerous on the ground, but also can KO you with one punch on the feet. Going into the Pimblett fight, he might look at Pimblett and think like, oh, this guy's a goofy guy. He's not that good, but it should be a good fight. I'm worried that he's going to underestimate him a little bit and not train that hard. And that's like the one fear that I have for Ilia Topuria, is that he rests on his laurels a little bit. He starts sipping his own Kool-Aid, and then he doesn't actually bust his ass in the gym, and he shows up nonchalant, Luke Rockhold mode against Michael Bisping in the rematch, where Rockhold had his chin on a silver platter. He was hands down, cool, calm, collected, as if he's in there sparring with like a fucking punching bag. I'm actually kind of worried that Topuria doesn't take Pimblett serious at all. That's the fear that I have with him fighting someone that he should easily dispose of and that doesn't deserve to be fighting for a belt to begin with right now, is that he doesn't take him serious and then he just gets caught or something like that. Now, I don't think that Ilia Topuria is the kind of fighter to show up like Luke Rockhold, literally chin on a silver platter, hands down, but I worry that he doesn't have like a serious training camp. That's just something I wanted to throw out there, but I don't think that'll be the case. I'm just saying a part of me worries that going into a fight with a guy like Pimblett, it might be. So I hope not. I hope Topuria stays motivated. I just hope this guy sticks around. I mean, you guys may not know this, but a year ago, Topuria in an interview said that he wanted to retire by the age of 30. He wanted to win a second belt, maybe defend it once, and then retire. So I hope that this guy just sticks around for like 2 more fights. I really hope that the Pimblett fight is not the last one, because it would be a shame for a guy as young as Topuria that's continuing to improve. That's like one of the most entertaining fighters we've ever seen. Like, it's very rare that you see this sort of knockout artist in the lighter weight classes, right? With this kind of boxing, KOing legend after legend after legend. I don't want this guy to retire. I mean, the division would just feel empty after, even though he just got here to the lightweight division. It would really be a big hit to the UFC. So I hope that the UFC can, start paying this guy more money, because we need this guy. We need him to KO more people. This was the only KO in a main event in 2025. Nobody else has delivered on a knockout. Not Alex Pereira. Nobody. Not Sean O'Malley. Nobody has been able to deliver like this. And now you got Ilia Topuria delivering like this. Sleeping Charles Oliveira. Nobody's ever done that to Charles. I know people are going to be saying Charles is washed. And it's like, yeah, I think it's clear that Oliveira is slightly declined at this point. I mean, after the KO, he's probably more than slightly declined. But going into the fight, I was saying he looked a little bit slower than he did when he was fighting Justin Gaethje and Kevin Lee. And nonetheless, I mean, he's still dangerous. He's still durable. But he gets dropped all the time. He gets hit easily. And he didn't finish Michael Chandler. You know what I mean? And it was interesting to me because I saw that a lot of people were rooting for Charles Oliveira, but even still, the odds were showing that no one actually believed he was going to win. But yeah, I'm happy to see this result. I mean, I love Charles Oliveira. I'm a big fan of him, but it's easy for me to accept him losing to a guy that's undefeated, that's putting people's lights out like this, that's actually like, super exciting. As I said, that has this aura and momentum. Oliveira kind of lost a lot of his aura. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's a great fighter. He's a legend. He's got the legendary former champ aura. But I'm talking about that aura of invincibility. Topuria has that. I don't want to see a fighter lose that to a fighter that lost it already. That's, since they were a champion, been winning, losing, going to a decision with Michael Chandler. Like, I don't know, man. Why would I root for Oliveira to win this fight? You know what I mean? Over Ilia Topuria. Don't get me wrong. Again, I love Charles. I like seeing him win. I don't want to see this guy get KO'd, but if he's fighting Ilia Topuria, the most exciting fighter in the sport, the most promising fighter in the sport, I'm rooting for that to continue, okay? So, yeah. Ilia Topuria is probably right up there with Volk. My favorite fighter. He's my second favorite fighter at the moment, right up there with Volk. So, amazing performance for Topuria. Let's talk about Makhachev, though. I mean, the Makhachev and JDM fight is just going to be clouded with people talking about him ducking Topuria. I mean, even though I do not believe that Makhachev moved up to fight JDM to duck Topuria, because first off, he didn't know that this was going to happen. He didn't have this result in front of him before he made his decision. And Jack Della Maddalena is a really tough fight. Is it as dangerous of a fight as Ilia Topuria? No. I know Jack Della Maddalena is bigger, but he's clearly not got the same one-punch KO threat. That's just not the case. Like, I mean, listen, he's a big, powerful guy. He does hit hard. He can KO you, but not like this. Either way, it's still a tough fight. Jack Della Maddalena has great takedown defense, but you just know that when Islam Makhachev is on Fight Week doing interviews, like the comment sections are just going to be filled with people saying, bro doesn't want the real smoke. Bro doesn't want problems with Topuria. And because of that, the fight isn't going to feel as big. This fight didn't feel as big as it should have been. I mean, you had Charles Oliveira. Again, he's been slowing down a little bit throughout the past years. And it should have been Makhachev in there, man. And unfortunately, the two biggest stars in the sport right now, Topuria and Makhachev, are just going to be like fighting these much smaller names. Again, Charles isn't a small name. Patty's not necessarily a small name. Maybe I shouldn't say much smaller names, but they're like right there. They're right next to each other. They have an opportunity to just turn around and start fighting each other, but no, they're just not gonna. And I hope that the UFC maybe pushes a little bit for it. Makhachev says that he's been struggling to gain weight, and he's only been able to gain 2 kilograms. And I was actually thinking about sending him the cookbook, but now I don't know. I kind of like the fact that he's struggling. Maybe the UFC can say, "Hey, man, I heard it's hard for you to gain weight. You've not really, put too much size on." And I think that cut to lightweight is going to be the same as it always is. Why not fight Ilia Topuria? Now, this is the thing. Makhachev doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's going to be motivated by an extra $5 million because he lives in Dagestan and it's pretty cheap living there. Even if you've had a couple of UFC fights under your belt, you know what I mean? So Makhachev's going to want his own GOAT status. He's going to want his own, double champ status. But at this point, man, even though Topuria didn't beat the best lightweight on the planet, I think it's clear that, like, if Makhachev were to fight him now, nobody would saying Topuria is a featherweight, all right? Because when people say the word, oh, he's a featherweight, it kind of assumes that he's a little bit of a small fry pipsqueak, doesn't hit that hard, man. And Makhachev taking him out is like Makhachev beating up on somebody that just shouldn't be in the octagon to begin with. But here you have Topuria disposing of Charles Oliveira easier than anyone in history. That's right, easier than, only Max Holloway has had an easier fight with Oliveira. But that was a fluke because Oliveira hurt his neck or something. But in every other real Charles Oliveira loss, there were tough scraps. There were tough moments, right? He's getting destroyed on bottom, and then he's fighting his way back, and he's having some moments here. He didn't have any fucking moments in this fight, all right? Like, people are going to say, no, what about the ground? What about the ground? No, he didn't have a moment on the ground. He had a little heel hook moment when Topuria was trying to get up to his feet. That shit happens in every fucking fight that you've ever seen, all right? That happens in every scramble that there's ever been with the jiu-jitsu artists in the UFC. They're always pulling for a heel hook when someone gets up, and it never, ever fucking lands. So I don't want to hear it, all right? I don't want to hear it. Can the UFC convince Makhachev to come back? I really hope they can, man. I really hope they can. But, after he's already vacated the belt and he's already had his eyes set on Jack Della Maddalena, I just don't see it happening, dude. I just don't see it happening. But, it's just, this is why I wanted that fight so badly, because I knew Topuria would translate at 155, and I know that Makhachev is better than Charles Oliveira, and I think he's better than Arman Tsarukyan too. And for Makhachev, especially now, for him to beat Ilia Topuria, that would 100% set himself apart as the GOAT. 100%. And for Topuria to beat Makhachev, that 100% sets him apart as being the GOAT. I know we had the pound for pound number one on the line, lightweight on the line with Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev, but Topuria versus Makhachev is a battle for who is the greatest fighter in the history of the sport. Straight up. I know that you have GSP. Some people are still going to be saying John Jones. Like, at some point, I don't think you can be the greatest fighter of all time unless you have, like, some serious quality on your resume. I think that there are some guys, like GSP has some okay quality with a lot of quantity. Jones has okay quality with a lot of quantity. But I think that we have to start understanding that beating guys like Volk, beating guys like Max, Charles Oliveira, I mean, these other heavier weight class guys, they can't compare it with that. All right. The divisions are more shallow as well, especially light heavyweight. It's just a more shallow division. There's like 20 guys in the light heavyweight division. There's like 100 guys at lightweight. So the best fighters, the guys that have been able to rise to the top of the rankings in the lightweight and the featherweight division, like, they've done a lot of work to get there. They've been able to build really solid resumes themselves. And when they get beat, as I've said in the past, it's like the fighter that beats them is sort of absorbing their resume and everything that they've done. And you've got Topuria taking out Volkanovski, who's a top 5 fighter. Max Holloway's a top 10 fighter. Charles Oliveira, probably like a top 30 fighter of all time. Former lightweight champion. And you've got Makhachev beating Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Volkanovski. I mean, like, him versus Topuria decides who is the GOAT. And if Makhachev goes out there and beats Jack Della Maddalena, I think that he has a claim to being the GOAT 100%, because I think that beating JDM for Makhachev, at least on paper, you could talk about the method, and maybe Ilia Topuria flatlining Charles is going to be more impressive than what Makhachev does, but we don't know what he's going to do, right? So, I mean, we'll see. But I think that just on paper, a JDM win, prime JDM, basically undefeated in the UFC, right? Well, he is undefeated in the UFC, but basically undefeated. He had a couple of losses as an amateur way back in the day, but he's on like a 20-fight win streak. That would be a better win than beating Oliveira right now, okay? I think it would be a better win, but I don't know if we're ever going to get that fight. I don't know if we're ever going to get it. I mean, I honestly just wish the UFC would do like a catchweight title for Topuria and Makhachev. It's that big of a fight where you could honestly do that, where you could just say, all right, we're not going to make Topuria move up to 170 pounds. That's ridiculous. We're not going to make Makhachev cut all the way back down to 155. Like, how about you guys fight at 160 pounds? I think that'd be totally fine. I think that'd be awesome. And I don't give a fuck if it's, no, but then it's not for the title. Who gives a fuck? All right, 5 pounds extra, 5 pounds less for Makhachev. Like, why not do that? Why not do a catchweight? Let's do a GOAT weight title. Ilia Topuria versus Makhachev. Like, fuck weight classes. Let's just see these guys fight. These are the best fighters ever. I personally think that Topuria beats him. Like, it's not even a debate in my mind. I'll just say that. Again, the level of ease at which Ilia Topuria is able to get to the chin of Oliveira. Not even... It's one thing if he lands a right hand. Remember where he rocked Holloway initially? He landed a nice, long, straight right hand. This was like a short, tight right hook. And he's like closing the distance on Oliveira crashing forward. A short right hook. Usually start your combination with like a right hand, or maybe you start with a left hook, right? That's the combo, or that's the punch that you usually intercept people with. It's the left hook. Ilia Topuria's out here fucking crashing forward with a tight right hook. With the speed that you've never seen before at lightweight. And then he catches him again with the left hook. Charles Oliveira slumps his chin. Did you guys see this? His chin hit his knee. So Oliveira got hit with a 3-piece. He delivered the final blow. The knee to the chin. That was pretty brutal. But, like, I don't see how Makhachev is dealing with that. Nobody at lightweight is dealing with that. Nobody. Not fucking Arman. You know, I know Arman is a great wrestler, and I do think Arman poses a significant threat to Ilia Topuria because if Oliveira is grappling with Topuria, he could be on his back, right? When you think of Arman, if he gets a hold of Topuria, he's stronger than Oliveira, he's a better wrestler. He could put Topuria on his back, and Topuria might not get up for the rest of the round. Like, that's a different problem. I understand that, but when it comes to, I mean, we can all recognize that Topuria is a very capable grappler. Like, he's a density maxer. He's got the short, stocky build, which is good for being able to build your way back up to your feet and even stuff and sprawl takedowns as well. He's explosive. And again, just great wrestling, great grappling. Dude, he had Oliveira in crucifix. He had him in side control. Like, who knows? He could have been able to keep Oliveira there for the rest of the round. He wanted to get up. He took it upon himself to get up to his feet. And so that's why he started getting tangled in the leg lock. But I don't think Topuria is going to struggle that much on the ground with these lightweights. And it just comes down to this. These guys are going to be forced to have exchanges with Topuria on the feet. They're going to be forced to sit in front of this guy. They're going to have to throw kicks. They're going to have to throw punches. They're going to have to be on their bike, backpedaling. They're going to have to be on the feet. That's my point. And I just don't think that these lightweights can afford that. It's one thing if you're Max Holloway and you've got the lighter man skill, one of the best strikers in the history of the sport, who just schooled Justin Gaethje, granite chin. It's like Holloway can take a couple of those big bombs early, and he'll be fine because of his chin. Volkanovski can stand with Topuria for 8 minutes because he's so slick with his footwork and all that, and he's a speedy Gonzalez, right? But these lightweights, man, and even they get knocked out. Even Max Holloway and Volk get knocked out. These lightweights, they're just not on the same level, man. You've got Oliveira, like, Plotty man blades, just sort of moving forward. And you know what? He's not even that slow. Like, Oliveira moving forward. By the way, I fucking predicted this fight so perfectly, man. I predicted this shit so perfectly. But either way, like, Oliveira, he doesn't even have a chance to, like, actually extend his hand a little bit. Like, he's going for something. He's, like, starting to throw a technique, you can see. And Topuria intercepts it. Like, he's just too fast. I'm sorry. Makhachev he's a little bit faster than Oliveira on the feet. He's a little more defensively sound, but he's not dealing with that. Arman Tsarukyan, if you watch his fight with Oliveira, Arman was outstriking Oliveira, and Arman didn't even look that great. You know, if you watch these lightweights in a vacuum and you just watch the lightweights fight each other, you think, oh, wow, these guys are pretty decent on the feet. They're pretty skilled because it's the lightweight division. It's very skilled. It's when you compare that to Ilia and Volk, the speed is different. And I know you had Makhachev do really well against Volk in the first fight on the feet. I understand that, but he didn't fear Volkanovski's power at all. Volk is not a heavy hitter like Topuria. Like, Volk is never crashing forward and knocking someone out cold like Ilia did to Oliveira. The point that I'm making is, like, these guys, they're just so many steps behind when it comes to everything. Speed, timing, distance management. And you give a guy like Topuria a second. A second. You give him a second, and he's taking you out. All right? So, yeah. I mean, if you're at this point saying, no, Makhachev's going to school him, man. Like, I don't know. I think you're delusional. I just do. Like, it'd be one thing if you think, I think that Makhachev can survive early and maybe get a hold of Topuria, take the wind out of his sails. That's what you got to say. Or, I think he gets the takedown early, maybe gets a sub. That's what you can say. But to say, I think he's too big for him, too much for him. Now he's going to school him in the clinch. Makhachev's going to put him on the edge of a jab, man. Like, fuck off, man. You know what I mean? Like, that shit is not happening, and you know it. And you know it. And you're probably worried if you're a fan of Pimblett, if you're a fan of Arman, like, if you're rooting for anyone in the lightweight division, let's be honest, you think that Topuria is going to win at this point, right? How could you not? All right? And people are going to say, yo, bandwagon. Yeah, and what? And what? I root for the fighters that are the most entertaining and the best in the world, in the cage, dude. Is there a problem with that? You're acting like you didn't become a fan of Charles Oliveira because he was getting highlight reel finishes, sending Justin Gaethje flying across the octagon. That wasn't a part of you becoming an even bigger fan of him. Like, people act like it's weird to be a fan of fighters just because they're winning. Like, dude, that's the whole fucking sport. All of our favorite fighters are all-time greats. And the ones that aren't, they're like meme favorite fighters where you're like, yeah, I just love this guy, man. He's just so funny or whatever. Like, but, you know, your real favorite fighter is Petr Yan. Your real favorite fighter is Merab. At this point, I mean, I love Merab. Some people are going to laugh at that. You're going to say, well, whose favorite fighter is Merab? But actually, Merab is a sick fighter. It's because you are a fan of their performances and you're impressed by what they're able to do in the octagon. That's why I'm a fan of Ilia. All right? He's not a villain. Stop calling this guy a villain. Like, you should have expected this to happen to begin with, and it's not a tough pill to swallow when you know it's going to happen. It wasn't even that difficult for me to see him KO Volk because I knew he was going to KO Volk. I knew it. I absolutely knew it. all right? It was more difficult for me to see Volk not get his hand raised against Makhachev because that was Volk's real first loss after seeing him do really well and defy the odds and go out there and test Makhachev more than people thought he was capable of doing. Like, that was tough for me. It was tough for me to see Charles Oliveira get submitted by Makhachev when I was convinced he was going to run through Islam. But, you know, some of these losses, I can see them coming from a mile away. It's not that hard for me to see, you know? The KO was pretty brutal, though. The KO was brutal, but it wasn't like as bad as the Jack Hermansson one. I mean, we'll talk about that. that was a pretty bad KO. So, yes, Charles Oliveira, legend, but it just felt like he was going to lose. You had Topuria in the stare down saying, "I'm sorry, it had to be you." And he was even telling Oliveira, "And you know that you're going to lose." Like, that was cold, man. We need that. We need a guy like this that's talking a little bit of crap, that's got this level of confidence, that has this undefeated aura, that's sleeping people out cold. This guy's Thanos. This guy is real life UFC version Thanos, man. All right, so, yep, lighter man skill prevails. A guy with Ilia Topuria's speed, you give a featherweight some power and no lightweight on the planet is beating them. Give a Speedy Gonzalez featherweight some power, yeah, it's over for lightweights. They're just screwed every time they get in the cage with these featherweights. I never want to hear, "He's going to be too big for a man." Like, I'd never want to hear that shit ever again. Either way, amazing win for Ilia Topuria. He's the greatest fighter I've ever seen. Like, again, resume-wise, okay, maybe not yet, but I've never seen a fighter this good. All right? Like, people aren't doing this to Oliveira. People, like, someone could KO Oliveira, but it's going to be like a late second round KO after lots of scrappy moments. Oliveira had no moments on the feet. I mean, he had one. He landed like one punch early on against Topuria, but you get what I'm saying. Knocking him out that easily, KOing Max, KOing Volk. This guy, I mean, you may as well just write it into his record that he's already knocked out Paddy Pimblett and Armand too, because he basically has. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. I picked Pantoja by submission. He gets done by submission. I was actually thinking of maybe picking Kai Kara-France. A part of it was Pantoja's 35. I got to give Pantoja some credit for that. He is the second fighter in UFC history to win a title at the age of 35 and older in the lighter weight classes. So Volk was the first one. Now Pantoja is the second, and that's very impressive. That is extremely impressive. But yeah, I was thinking, man, maybe Kai Kara-France could do well with his takedown defense because people talk about his takedown defense as being really good. And a lot of that comes from his fight with Askar Askarov. But then I rewatched that fight and I realized, wait a second. Like, the only thing that Kai Kara did well in that fight was not get submitted. It was submission defense that he did pretty well with. But as far as takedown defense, like, he got taken down in that fight. He got his back taken multiple times in that fight. And that just made me think that Pantoja was going to submit him easily. Because if Askar Askarov is taking your back left and right, and I know Pantoja lost to Askar Askarov, it's a different stylistic matchup. The point is, if you've got Askar Askarov with no striking, no threat on the feet, like just taking your back effortlessly, Pantoja's going to be able to do it. And Pantoja did it. And Kai Kara-France, with the threat of the takedown looming over him, wasn't really able to get anything going on the feet. Even in the second round where we saw a lot of striking, Pantoja did really well with the kicks. Lots of good combinations, finishing with kicks as well. And he controlled Kai Kara-France in the second round. So it was just domination, one-way traffic. Pantoja gets his fourth title defense, fifth title win, submits Kai Kara-France, a good name on his resume. To be fair, Kai Kara-France doesn't have the best resume in his own right, but like, people respect him as like a solid elite fighter. I mean, if you're out here KOing Steve Ercik, then, you know, we know he's pretty solid. We know he's good. We know he's dangerous. And now Pantoja's going to fight Joshua Van. And listen, I'm impressed with Joshua Van, but if Joshua Van has 15 minutes on the feet with Brandon Royval, okay, and he's not KOing him, I don't think he's KOing Granite Chin Pantoja, who's not going to give him 15 minutes on the feet, who's just going to get a hold of him and try to drag him to the canvas. Like, I know that it's a different stylistic matchup, but if Joshua Van is on the feet for 15 minutes against a not-so-powerful Royval, and it goes to decision and it's an absolute war, and we'll talk about it. It was one of the best fights I've ever seen. I can't pick him to beat Pantoja, who's, again, like, doing this to Kai Kara-France. Like, we talk about Joshua Van's takedown defense. Kai Kara-France's good takedown defense. It doesn't matter. Pantoja's just that good. So I think he's going to destroy Joshua Van. I probably think he's going to submit him in like the first or second round, but we'll see. I'm happy that Pantoja keeps winning, man. Like, I said in my video about a month ago, I made a video on what every single champion needs to do to become the GOAT of the sport if they've already achieved GOAT status in their weight class. And if they haven't achieved GOAT status in their weight class, what do they need to do in their own division to become the GOAT of their weight class? And I said Alexandre Pantoja needs 2 more. He needs to beat Kai Kara-France, and he needs to win 1 more fight. And I think that right now he's basically on par with Demetrius Johnson. And some people are going to have an aneurysm with that because they're going to say, title defenses. And I heard John Anik saying he's still 7 shy of Demetrius Johnson. And it's like, dude, we need to shut the fuck up about title defenses. Like, do we not recognize at this point that for modern era fighters, they actually have to put together a crazy win streak to get to the belt? Whereas these long title defense streaks, like when they won their first title, that was like the 3rd win on their win streak. You know what I mean? Their title win streak was their win streak. Whereas these champions today, they have a whole win streak before they get to the belt. They have to fight 10 times in the UFC to be able to fight for the belt to begin with. And by the time they get there, they already have a bunch of good ranked wins that are basically the equivalent of championship title defense wins. Okay? So I think he's 1 away. He just beat Kai Kara-France. He's beat Brandon Moreno multiple times. He's beat Brandon Royval multiple times. Like, this guy has an insanely good resume. He's got lots of quantity as well, lots of good quality. You compare it to Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson, outside of Henry Cejudo, who he's 1-1 with, and I always forget his name, but Joseph Benavidez, like, who else are we talking about? And not even Joseph Benavidez is on the same level as Brandon Moreno, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think this guy needs 15 title defenses. You know what I mean? The title defense shit is so fucking overrated. Pantoja is 1 win away from becoming the flyweight GOAT. And another reason why people might not like that or may have a hard time accepting that is because they assume that Demetrius Johnson's still like top 3 all time, right? Like, they've never really confronted the idea of Demetrius Johnson's, you know, title reign being a tad bit overrated because he was beating a lot of guys that weren't that great. And so they assume that, oh, well, he's up there like top 3, right? He's right behind GSP and Jones, right? Or, you know, oh, Jones is no longer the GOAT because he ducked Aspinall and PEDs, so it's Mighty Mouse and GSP now. Well, I don't think he's top 3 or even top 5, okay? So just because Pantoja becomes the flyweight GOAT doesn't mean, wait, you're saying Pantoja's a number 3 ranked fighter of all time now? No. Pantoja's maybe top 5 if he beats Joshua Van. I think he's definitely a top 10 fighter of all time now. But, like, he's high up there. He's maybe, like, at the 10 spot or some shit. Like, he's basically tied with Demetrius Johnson. Like, they might not even be top 10. So, yeah, Pantoja, honestly, he might not even be top 10 now, even though he's sort of tied with Demetrius Johnson. So, yeah, I think that he's right there. He's on the verge. And for him to continue to get better at 35 is insane. Like, it's one thing with Volk beating Diego Lopez. I don't necessarily think Diego Lopez is even top 3 at featherweight. I think that Gene Silva is a better fighter than Diego Lopez, although we'll find out because they're fighting each other. I think that Movsar's slightly better. And I also think that, Ilia Topuria was obviously better, and he left the division. So there was a few guys that I think Volk would have struggled with. Now, I do think Volk would have beat Movsar, and I still think he beats Movsar. But my point is, him breaking the 35 curse against Diego Lopez is one thing, but Pantoja, it's not like there's this long list of contenders that he hasn't beat that we actually think have a great chance to beat him. I mean, you may think Joshua Van beats him, but outside of that, he's basically beaten every single other person in the division. And he takes out like a solid title defense in Kai Kara-France, showing no signs of slowing down. Volkanovski, even though he beat Diego Lopez, he did show some signs of slowing down. Like, he doesn't look as slick in his footwork and as fast as he did back in the day. He looks a little bit aged, and he even admits that he feels like he's slowed down a tiny bit, but he still thinks that he's good enough to beat people, so he'll stick around. But either way, Pantoja winning at 35. There was no one that vacated in order for him to win that belt at 35. Like, he's been the champ. He's been holding strong in that division for a while. And he's the second guy to break the 35 curse. So in a way, it's even more impressive, especially because this is the lightest out of all of the weight classes. This is the speediest out of all of the weight classes. And the 35 curse sort of assumes that it's hard to stay on top in the lighter weight classes, not only because they're more competitive, just because there's more people in them, but also just because you're more heavily reliant on speed in those divisions. And if you slow down a bit, these other contenders that are in their prime, they're going to have that speed advantage, and that's massive. So I'm really impressed with Pantoja, showing no signs of slowing down. I'm happy to see a guy like him win, even though I love a brash fighter like Ilia Topuria, a larger-than-life figure like Charles Oliveira. A guy like Pantoja, he doesn't have the same aura, but I just like seeing him win. You know what I mean? He's a great guy, humble guy. I like seeing him win. So he's a great champ to have. Let's get on to the next one. Royval versus Joshua Van. This was a sick fight, man. Such an amazing fight. I picked Brandon Royval to beat Joshua Van. Joshua Van wins. I do think that Brandon Royval was about 15 seconds away from winning this fight. Even though it was really close, I gave Joshua Van the first round. But the tide started turning in the second, and Brandon Royval started taking over a little bit. I think he outstruck Joshua Van by a pretty good margin of strikes in the second. He was outstriking Joshua Van comfortably in the beginning of the third round. Then Joshua Van started doing better, but it was still kind of competitive. But I thought that Royval was, because he had won the majority of the third round and it was still competitive when Joshua Van was starting to build back into it, I thought maybe Royval is going to win the fight, second, third round. He'll get it done by decision. But then, again, it's such a crazy fight, such a close fight. Both of these guys are beating the shit out of each other for like the previous 14 minutes. You're not thinking so straight in a moment like that, right? You're just running on adrenaline, and you've taken a lot of hits to the head. So, I mean, I'm not shocked to see this, but Royval is still fighting tooth and nail. Both guys in this moment probably think that they need to put their foot on the gas more than ever. There's only 10 seconds. This is a close fight. And Royval does that, and he gets caught with a great combination by Joshua Van, gets sat down, dropped, and that ultimately wins Joshua Van the fight. But I do think that Royval was winning. In the second round, he was really giving Joshua Van issues with his jab, his 1-2s, and it seemed like for every 6 or 7 strikes Royval would land, Joshua Van would land a combo, like a 1-2 or something like that. But either way, I'm just so impressed. 23 years old. This guy has only been training for 5 years. I mean, I've been on the Joshua Van hype train since his UFC debut, since round 1 against Imagulov. I forget his name. Damir Ismagulov. Is that it? Is it Damir Ismagulov? Either way, it was the coconut head, the bowl cut guy. Since round 1 of that fight, I was on the Joshua Van hype train. I was saying, damn, this guy is really impressive, and he's only like 21 years old. And I remember the commentator saying that he had only been training for like 2 years up until that point. And it was shocking to see like this level of striking in someone that's only been training for 2 years. I picked Royval, and a part of it was because, man, I mean, Joshua Van, he just got KO'd last year, and he's came back, and he's won a lot of fights, but going from Bruno Silva to a guy like Brandon Royval, who's fought the who's who, who's been in title fights, who's had 5-round main events with Moreno, and he's beat a guy like Moreno. And to be fair, Royval is a 5-round fighter, but it didn't look like Joshua Van was slowing down either. He's probably going to be a great 5-round fighter too. A part of me, I just thought it was tough to pick Joshua Van to win a fight against such a seasoned vet who's known for his output. Like, Joshua Van is the output guy, but Brandon Royval is known for great output too. And we saw Joshua Van struggle with longer, rangier fighters. But man, he was able to pass the tests. And I think it's good that he had a scrap. Like, because the last time Joshua Van had a serious scrap, he got put away. And so I think it's good that he went into a fight, especially before fighting Pantoja, who is going to give you a scrap. Even if he's not predominantly a striker, Pantoja is not going to shy away from a gunfight on the feet. And I like that Joshua Van had to go through a really tough fight like this in order to get to the title, because we often see with other fighters like Adesanya, they have a scrap before they fight for the undisputed title. Adesanya had that war with Kelvin Gastelum, and you're thinking, man, if he got tested by Kelvin Gastelum and bubbled up by Kelvin Gastelum, what's Whittaker going to do? But there's also the reality in that situation where it's like, well, maybe that bolsters the confidence of Adesanya. Maybe that gives him more confidence. He knows he can go to that dark place, and then he goes into the Whittaker fight in the back of his mind, understanding that if things get scrappy, I'll be totally fine. And it almost levels them up in a way. And I think that Joshua Van getting scrappy with Royval, we could see a leveled up Joshua Van make it look easy against Pantoja, because even though Pantoja's phenomenal, he's not the same striker as Royval. He's not the same striker as a guy like Moreno. He does get hit a lot. But then again, it's like, dude, the threat of the takedown is just such a big issue in that fight. It's one thing to have, again, 15 minutes on the feet with a guy where you know he's not shooting any takedowns. And I was a little bit surprised that Royval never once shot a takedown in this fight. Like, I felt like maybe he could have gone for one. But either way, I just think it's going to be different. Like, I don't see Joshua Van being as comfortable on the feet. And I think that we're going to see Pantoja close the distance and get a hold of him within the first minute, like he did against Kai Kara-France. I mean, listen, Kai Kara-France, dangerous, knockout power. He could really hurt you, just like Joshua Van can. Probably has more power, pound-for-pound power than Joshua Van. But either way, Pantoja was not worried about that and still crashed forward, was willing to take a punch on the way in early on in the fight, and got the takedown in the first minute. And again, Kai Kara-France, people were talking about his takedown defense. I think that Pantoja is going to get him down early, and I think he's going to get him out of there. So, Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. I picked Beneil Dariush to win, and he gets it done. I know that some people had a hard time believing that a guy coming off of 2 KO losses in a row would be able to bounce back against a hungry fighter like Renato Moicano. He got dropped in the first round, and that really scared me. But even before he got dropped, he was actually doing pretty well. And I mentioned that those mule kicks were going to be a problem. Beneil Dariush, he kicks like a mule. You can hear his kicks from miles away. Leg kicks, body kicks, hard kicks. He was doing really well. I think he was actually edging out the first round until he got dropped. But then after that, Beneil Dariush resorts to grappling, first and foremost in the second round, goes after the takedown, gets it, and is able to control Renato Moicano and push a pace on him in the grappling. And after that, Renato Moicano is totally gassed out. And Beneil Dariush, very tired as well. I mean, it's been a very tough physical fight up until that point. But Moicano just doing nothing in the third round, hardly throwing any strikes. He's losing the third round. Beneil Dariush has a couple of moments where he's controlling Moicano in the grappling. He's landing a couple of good strikes here and there. Moicano doing nothing. And then in the last 15 seconds, Moicano shoots a takedown as if he's not already lost the majority of the round. Like, I don't understand what he was thinking. Like, why are you shooting a fucking takedown with 10 seconds left to go? Do you not feel that Beneil Dariush has been kicking you and punching you for the majority of the round and you've not been throwing any strikes? Like, does it not occur to you that you lost the second round as well? I don't understand what he was doing. He should have just been spamming 1-2s, but he was exhausted, gassed. Beneil Dariush wins. Beneil Dariush proves that he is still able to compete with some of these elite lightweights. And Renato Moicano, I wouldn't say he's top 5 material or whatever, but Beneil Dariush proved that he was a little bit better than Moicano. Now, it was still somewhat competitive. As good as Dariush is on the ground, I can't look at what he was doing on the feet, even though his kicks looked good, and he still didn't look that great on the feet. Like, I think Beneil Dariush gets slept by a bunch of fighters at lightweight. Like, I think if you put him in there with Arman again, he probably gets KO'd again. If you put him in there against Topuria, I mean, you may as well knock Beneil Dariush out on the way to the octagon. Like, you may as well get one of the bouncers to do it because he's going to get knocked out in the cage, okay? Like, you have Beneil Dariush fight Oliveira, he's getting knocked out again. I mean, listen, I guess what I'm saying is despite Beneil looking really solid in the grappling, I said going into this fight that Moicano's not that good on the feet, and that's why I think that Dariush will do just fine in this fight. But against actually decent strikers, like, Dariush is just not going to do well. Like, even against Pimblett, I think Pimblett might be able to KO him at this point. And that's just because he's a little bit slow, and his chin is not that good. I mean, not many people get dropped and sat down like that against Moicano. Moicano's not known for cracking people like that. So I'm happy that Dariush won. I love Beneil Dariush. I think that He should have more fanfare. People should be bigger Beneil Dariush fans. He's a great guy, gets on the mic, shouts out Jesus. And, I mean, what more could you ask for from Dariush, right? What more can you ask for from good man Dariush? Good man Dariush. Dude, Dariush is hilarious, though. He's coming out to... I remember Dariush versus Oliveira. It was the battle of the gospel music. You have Dariush, rise up, and then Oliveira coming out to his Brazilian gospel music. We need another gospel music showdown with Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. That's what I want to see. So, yeah, I like Moicano, too. I'm a fan of him as well. It's tough to see him lose. I just always thought that Dariush was the more elite grappler. I mean, again, we can talk about Dariush's striking, looking a little sluggish and whatnot, but you cannot deny he's one of the best grapplers in the sport. And even though Moicano is a phenomenal grappler, I think Dariush is a different level of elite. So let's get on to the next one. Payton Talbott versus Felipe Lima. I was wrong on this fight. Now, I did say that I will not be surprised if Payton Talbott wins, and I think people are overrating Felipe Lima, but the way I thought the fight was going to go, if Payton Talbott were to have won, was completely different than the way it actually happened. Okay, like I thought that if anything, Felipe Lima was going to get torched on the feet, that he was going to get destroyed. And that even though he has a grappling advantage, like he's being overrated on the feet. He's a speed merchant. Outside of his speed, he's not that good. And even though he did go into this fight looking very fast, it wasn't like just that. I actually thought he was looking like the better striker. Like Payton Talbott looked worse than I expected on the feet. Felipe Lima looked a lot better. Like he was cracking Payton Talbott with speedy 1-2s, getting out of the way really quickly. And Payton Talbott had some moments. He was landing a couple of jabs and a couple of spinning back kicks, but he really didn't have that many big moments on the feet. It seemed like Felipe Lima was the one that was landing big punches upstairs. Now, it is true that Felipe Lima told this corner that he wasn't striking with Payton Talbott and he was pushing the grappling because he felt the power of Talbott and that was worrying him. So Talbott was hitting him with these jabs and these grazing right hands, and clearly he hits very hard, and that was worrying Felipe Lima because you had his coaches saying, dude, trust in your striking, you're doing really well. But if he kept going to the grappling, it must have been because he was aware of the power of Talbott and he didn't feel comfortable standing with him because he didn't want to get hit by him. But either way, Payton Talbott didn't do as well as I expected on the feet. Again, that just goes to show how fast Felipe Lima is. He's hard to pin down, but he did so much better than I expected when it came to the grappling. Like I knew that he was going to come in here a little bit improved with the grappling, but he not only came in here a little bit improved, like he drastically improved. Now, I do think Raoni Barcelos is a better grappler than Felipe Lima. Like, he has a wrestling pedigree that runs back. He has shown us that he was able to ragdoll Talbott, and he's been able to outgrapple some other guys in the UFC. Like, I think his grappling's a little bit more proven than Lima, but either way, Lima's still a good takedown artist. Still a very good takedown artist. Still very slick. But Lima was getting put in these bad positions. Lima was shooting takedowns, getting them reversed. Sometimes he made a mistake by sort of rushing things in the grappling. Like he would try to jump on Talbott's back and try to get himself a submission instead of slowly building towards a dominant position and just focusing on controlling Talbott, getting him to the ground slowly. He would sort of rush things and he would wound up on bottom because he would sort of fall off the back of Payton Talbott, or he would shoot a takedown and then get reversed, right? But Payton Talbott, man, he won the grappling exchanges. Not only was he stuffing a lot of takedowns, whether Felipe Lima was shooting a double leg and he was sprawling, or he was on a single leg and Payton Talbott was able to keep standing and stay balanced. But we also saw Payton Talbott just get dominant position, top position, and be able to win moments by landing some little ground and pound shots as well and holding Felipe Lima down. So this was a really good performance from Payton Talbott, very promising performance from him. Answered a lot of questions. Before this, he had wins over Cameron Simon and Giannis Gamori, right? Like, these are not great wins, but beating Felipe Lima, taking his undefeated record, that's actually very impressive. So great win for Payton Talbott. Felipe Lima looked really good on the feet, looked excellent on the feet. So he proved me wrong in a way because I thought he was going to get destroyed on the feet. I didn't think he was going to be as slick as he was, but yeah, he's still green, still very green. And that's sort of the thing that I noticed about Talbott. It wasn't just that I thought he was more comfortable on the feet, but Payton Talbott just fights in a more comfortable manner. Like, he seems more cool, calm, and collected. Whereas Felipe Lima, everything he does is like too spazzy. That's a good way to describe him. He's a little bit too spazzy with everything that he does. And that leads to making a lot of mistakes. So it fed right into Payton Talbott's game. Payton Talbott gets it done. A big upset victory for him. Let's get on to the next one. Gregory Rodrigues versus Jack Hermansson. This was nasty. This was absolutely filthy. Jack Hermansson brutally sleeps Gregory Rodrigues in the first round. I love Gregory Rodrigues. You guys know how I feel about this, but Jack Hermansson's power is just different. No, I'm joking. Yeah, Jack Hermansson was getting the jab going. I was doing the baseball chants. Here we go, Hermansson. Here we go. I was doing the baseball chants. I was eating my Cracker Jacks, right? I was tipping the cap, man. I was having a good time. I was watching Jack Hermansson. His jab actually looked really fast. Like, I actually think Hermansson looked improved with the jab. I mean, his jab looked amazing against Pfeiffer. It was piston-like against Gregory Rodrigues, but I picked Rodrigues to get the KO in this fight. And that was because I saw Hermansson take a lot of damage early on against Pfeiffer, and he's had a year out of the cage. And while that can be good for some fighters, for an older fighter, taking these long amounts of time off in between fights, like eventually your age is going to catch up to you. He's 37, age caught up to him. Hermansson's always been kind of hittable. And again, it's like if you're taking those big bombs from Pfeiffer, and I don't even know how he was able to take some of them, I think Gregory Rodrigues is going to be able to hit him as well and hit him a lot early. And he was. And I just thought that Hermansson might not be as durable as he usually is, because he's older, right? Age is going to catch up at some point, and we see Gregory Rodrigues getting busted up with the jab and just taking his time, because, again, you don't really have to respect the power of Jack Hermansson that much. And eventually Rodrigues lands a nasty hook on the chin of Jack Hermansson, sleeps him out cold. Follow-up shot, totally unnecessary, but I understand it. You've got an adrenaline rush. I mean, things are crazy in a fight. I understand that. But that follow-up shot did not help Jack Hermansson. He was out for 5 minutes, it seemed. So that was a rough one. I didn't love seeing Jack Hermansson get slept out cold. That was way more brutal than even the Cannonier one. I mean, he got knocked out by Cannonier back in the day, but this one was nasty. This is one of the nastiest KOs I've seen in a long time. Not as clean as the Topuria Oliveira KO. That was cleaner. This was more like, man, he's sort of reaching for Hermansson, right? He's throwing a nice looping middleweight hook. It catches Hermansson perfectly on the chin, puts him away. Ilia was just slick, tight combination. That was clean, man. But this one was a nasty KO. So let's get on to the next one. I told you I was going to look dumb if I got this one wrong, but I got it right. And I was confident. If you guys watch my prediction video, you know how confident I was. I was almost bragging and boasting. I was like Ilia Topuria celebrating the night before his fight with Oliveira, celebrating the victory as if it's already been attained. That's what I was doing with this. I said it's written Jose Miguel Delgado is going to win this fight. I know he's going to win. Hyder Amil undefeated. Hyder Amil marauder, best marauder of all time, whatever. Jose Delgado, fast, nasty with his combos. I even mentioned the knees. Did I not mention the knees? I even mentioned the knees. I said Jose Miguel Delgado is going to speed mog Hyder Amil. He hits super hard. Hyder Amil is so hittable. And Hyder Amil is like, big slugging hooks. Jose Delgado is slick combos with knees finishing them. Like, he'll throw a knee to finish a combination, and that's how he caught Hyder Amil. Right? I was watching Jose Delgado's fights before the UFC, and I saw all these nasty knees that he was throwing, and I knew this guy, I mean, he's going to get hit here and there, but he's a marauder in his own right. He can catch a slow guy like Hyder Amil in his tracks with a nasty combination. He's going to put something at the end of the combination too, like a knee, and that's exactly what happened. He KOs Hyder Amil first round. I got this one right. Now, I know Jose Delgado was technically the favorite, which is interesting, but it kind of felt like most people were going with Hyder Amil. Like, I just knew, I could sense it. When this fight was first booked, that people were going to go with Hyder Amil because he got a win over William Gomez, and he's had some other great marauder performances, but at the end of the day, he's just so hittable. He's kind of slow. William Gomez doesn't hit that hard. Jose Delgado hits really hard. So it's just different. But yeah, I'd like to see Hyder Amil bounce back and get some wins because he is very entertaining. I do like Hyder Amil's style. He's pretty entertaining, but yeah, I'm happy to be right on that. Tracy Cortez gets it done. I did pretty well on this card, guys. Terrance McKinney, I picked him by first round finish against Vyacheslav Borschev. I said he's either going to KO him easily or he's just going to take him down and ragdoll him and finish him on the ground easily. He did just that. Submits Vyacheslav Borschev. I think it was a mounted guillotine. Nasty win for Terrance McKinney. This is the level of competition that Terrance McKinney is going to bulldoze every single time. And Terrance McKinney, we know he's always been a bit of a glass cannon. But again, it's like, how could you not pick him against a guy who's not even a cannon? He's just sort of glass. Now, again, I like Vyacheslav Borschev. I like his boxing. He's very crisp with his combinations and his striking. But he doesn't hit that hard. He's not very dangerous. And his grappling isn't even that good. And he's chinny. So it's like, he's the perfect guy to expect to get destroyed by a Terrance McKinney, who is a glass cannon. So Terrance McKinney's back. He's on a good win streak, and I think it's time to give him a bump up in competition. Jacobe Smith versus Niko Price. Kobe, man. This was actually interesting. I do have to say I'm a little bit disappointed with the UFC allowing the last living dodo bird to go into a cage fight. I always thought that was a little bit weird. I don't know. I sort of lose respect for the UFC with fights like this. But either way, there was no harm inflicted to the dodo bird. Got a couple of cuts, but ultimately he's okay. He's doing fine. He's flapping around his wings as we speak. He's totally fine. He's heading back to Florida. As I said in my video, they got great conservation efforts in Florida, so I absolutely love it. Niko Price is going to be just fine. But what was surprising about this fight, it wasn't that Jacobe Smith ragdolled Niko Price early, even though I picked him by brutal KO. I said he's going to get it done in the first couple of minutes, and he landed some good shots early. He could have just kept it standing, and he probably would have KO'd Niko Price. But what was very interesting is that after ragdolling Niko Price and beating him up on the ground easily in the first round, he looked completely gassed, like completely gassed out after that, which was kind of shocking how much this guy gassed himself out. And yeah, it's just kind of crazy. Like, he's clearly very explosive, but like early on in a fight, Jacobe Smith is one of the fastest guys in the welterweight division. Everything that he throws is like lightning. And then in the beginning of the second round, this guy is moving around like he's stuck in molasses. So we learned a lot about Jacobe Smith. We learned that he is someone that is like maybe a Michel Pereira. Like, he's the Michel Pereira 2.0, right? Now, maybe he'll go into his next fight and he won't fuck around and wrestle because maybe wrestling is going to gas him out a lot. Maybe he's sort of going to turn into a bit of a Yoel Romero who's like afraid to wrestle because he's going to gas himself out. So he sort of sticks behind a low output approach, just chasing a big bomb. But yeah, man, he really didn't look that great after round one. Even though he got the submission and that was great, even though he got the finish, it's like, yeah, but we all expected him to beat Niko Price by finish anyway. Like, it's not, you can't say, oh, we finished Niko, though. It's like, yeah, we expected that. All right. It fell short of expectations because he didn't finish Niko Price in the first minute. All right. We expected a finish. A submission is great. Okay. Yeah. It shows that he can submit someone, but it's like Niko Price, though. It's literally a dodo bird. You know, like, I don't know. I'm not that impressed by getting a submission over the last dodo bird. It's one thing if there were still lots of dodo birds and there was a healthy population of them and they had a little bit of that extra confidence, but the dodo bird has always been an animal that when they're separated from the pack, they almost feel like they're a little bit more vulnerable, which they obviously are in nature. And Niko Price is just not going to have the same confidence as he did when he was knocking people out off of his back, when there were more dodo birds in the world. All right, guys. But like, you get the point. Jacobe Smith, he's dangerous in the first round. I think he's going to learn from this and go into his next fight, and he will keep it standing. He's going to, try to strike. But yeah, he's got to improve his gas tank one way or the other, because eventually he's like just going to fight someone who he won't be able to KO in the first minute on the feet, and he'll be forced to go into the later rounds with them. In the last fight, Jhonata Diniz versus Alvin Hines. Good win for Jhonata Diniz. I picked him to win by KO, but it wasn't that impressive. I mean, here you've got Alvin Hines, who just started training MMA like a couple of years ago. And he's like a predominant jiu-jitsu guy. Like, that's what he does. That's what he likes to do. That's his bread and butter, grappling. He can't get the grappling going. He's getting his takedown stuffed. So you've got Jhonata Diniz, former Glory kickboxer, on the feet with the jiu-jitsu guy who's barely been training MMA for more than like a couple of years. And Jhonata Diniz takes him to a somewhat competitive decision. Like, I thought this was a terrible look for Jhonata Diniz. Good look for Alvin Hines. He's not that experienced in MMA, and he was able to take some big punches and prove his grit, right? He didn't slow down at all. But Jhonata Diniz, this Glory kickboxer, KO guy, you've got a jiu-jitsu guy in front of you, and you're not, it wasn't even like he didn't KO him. He didn't even style on him. So I thought this was a pretty lackluster performance. Let's see how I did on picks. I got that one right, 2-0, 3-0. This doesn't really count, does it? I mean, I got this one wrong, but I don't know, guys. I mean, can we really say I got that wrong because I didn't really put any effort into the prediction? So let's just say I got it wrong. All right. So 3-1, 4-1, 5-1. I got that one wrong. 5-2, 6-2, 6-3, 7-3, 8-3. 8-3. If you're counting predictions that I actually put effort into, I would say 8-2. But I did pretty well. Picked Ilia Topuria to get it done easily, and he gets it done easily. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.